Hello, Tom Lavecchia here with a very special edition of the New Theory podcast. Now, I don't think I've had a guest on 3 times, but if you're going to have a guest 3 times, it's going to be Michael Franzese. Michael Franzese, welcome back to the New Theory podcast. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good, Tom. Always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. So we are going to discuss today. Michael's going to be in Atlantic City on September 23rd. He's going to be discussing kind of the history of the mob, the Jersey mob, AC, that kind of fun stuff. And we're going to do a nice little fun giveaway. We're giving away 6 pairs of tickets. Yes, 12 tickets, 6 pairs of tickets. We're going to be a code at the end they have to drop in order to qualify. And if you buy tickets, don't worry, because I suggest you buy them because they're going to sell out. We'll have them change the name at will call, and you can always give them to a family or friend. So, Michael, without further ado, welcome back to the New Theory podcast. So, give us a little bit about, and it's debated whether it's not the oldest mob out there between here, New Orleans, Jersey, New Orleans, kind of a little bit push and pull. Give us your thought as an ex-mobster about the origins of the New Jersey mob.
Well, listen, it goes way back, and I always look at New York and New Jersey kind of the same. I always look. Don't get insulted, but I always look at Jersey as the young stepsister of New York, kind of, but joined at the hip. And obviously, listen, there's a long history there, and the seat of power really for Cosa Nostra in this country was really New York and New Jersey. You can put them both together.
Yeah.
But the initial first origins were in New Orleans area.
Yeah.
Of course, Carlos had a huge presence there, still does in many ways, still has an impact there with people that were around him. But it's really all about New York and New Jersey.
Absolutely. And interesting enough is New Jersey is probably one of the only states where 7 mafia families actively operate. The 5 families, obviously, it's in New York, and then we'll get into the Scarfer family in a minute. How did the mafia specifically become powerful in New Jersey? Obviously, again, like Jordan hip in New York, but what made the New Jersey mob powerful, in your opinion?
Well, again, I always say this, Tom, from the golden years of Cosa Nostra in this country, really from the late 40s, early 50s, right through the mid 80s, when Giuliani started to go crazy with the RICO, statute and put so many guys away and really devastated the life. But during that, period of time, that 40 years or so, 50 years, we control the unions, and again, the seat of power for that was definitely New York, New Jersey. We had influence right into the White House during that time, no question about it. And we had, we controlled a lot of things on the street. So we controlled the numbers business on the street, everything in between, and had power into the White House. So when you control that kind of authority, you pretty well got it wrapped up.
Especially the New Jersey family, specifically the Cavalcantes, is homegrown, very strong construction. Really quick, there's a funny story. There was a guy that was in construction that didn't do business with John Riggi, met with John Riggi in the city for dinner, and he was expecting to get shaken down. He was recording it. It was the FBI was involved. So rather than John Riggi go to him and extort him, he had a lot of his friends show up, walk over that were high-profile developers and said, hey, it's great to do business with John Riggi, and gave him a lot of glowing endorsements. So he kind of got around, a little double entendre to get involved. So just a quick John Riggi story. But you're going to be...
I can tell you this. I love John Riggi. We had a pretty good relationship. He and I actually had a deal where we were collecting money on every window that was installed in all the major buildings in Manhattan.
Oh, wow.
And we had it together. And Jimmy Rotunda was a little bit involved at that point also. And what happened, it went on for quite some time. And then there was somebody that was sharing, I don't want to mention his name. He was a co-defendant on mine on one case, ended up getting convicted and turned informant. And he's the one that blew the whistle on the arrangement. But we had it going on for quite some time.
Interesting. Little known fact, John Riggi is half from Ribera, which 90% of the Cavalcantes are from. But his mother was from the same town in Italy as my mother. So it was kind of cool where a lot of these people hooked up. So we talk about John Riggi, what are some of the figures historically that, you mentioned the Scarfo, you mentioned some of the Jersey guys, some of the Philly guys. What are some of the historical guys that you maybe plan on talking about from a historical perspective?
Well, Nicky Scoffer for sure. He and I, a lot obviously is said about Nicky, but I got along with him. I got along with most guys,
Yeah,
Tom, honestly. We'll talk about him. We'll talk a little bit about John Riggy. Obviously, Jimmy Rotunda and I were pretty close. We were on trial. We were co-defendants together for a long time.
yeah,
And I'm not gonna blow the whistle on everybody, but I have a few that I haven't mentioned before that
yeah,
I'll be bringing up, and I'm gonna get into kind of the history of what really went on in Atlantic City. Atlantic City was a hot spot for us. I
yep,
don't know if you know that,
yeah,
going way back. And we're going to talk about that. We'll talk a little bit about the Philadelphia mob because they're kind of joined, Jersey,
yeah,
Philadelphia.
yeah,
So we're going to give a good history of that, and obviously a little bit of my personal story. We're going to have a nice Q&A period, and I tell people all the time, you can ask me anything you want. I've been asked everything under the
yeah,
sun. And I always say, Tom, if I don't want to answer, I know how to take the fifth. I've done that many times. So,
exactly.
but usually I answer. But it'll be a fun night.
Now, if I remember correctly, and if I'm wrong, I'm going to sound really stupid. You were trying to organize, I think, all the security guys in Atlantic City and control that union, correct? I'm not.
That's correct. Yeah, I had control with a fellow by the name of Danny Cunningham of the security guards,
Yeah,
and we were going to unionize all the hotels in Atlantic City, and
nice.
Nicky Scoffer was with me on that. I'll tell you a funny story.
Yeah,
Al Sharpton was a guy that we did business with.
yeah,
He was kind of a hired gun for us at the time.
yeah,
I told Al, I said, Al, I'm going to need some people to be picketing in front of the hotels. I said, I need your help on that. And I got to tell you, so I don't want to be offensive, but I'm going to tell you his exact answer.
yeah,
That's when he had his warm up suit. He was heavy, had the
yep,
gold chains around him and the long hair.
yep.
And he said, Michael, he said, for the right price, he said, I'll have 10 busloads of ends out there picketing day and night. No problem.
I got a funny Sharpton story. I had him on the podcast, but what happened was he likes Club Macanudo. So if you're looking to find him, go to Club Macanudo in the city. So I'm there one night and I see him standing. He's waiting for somebody. I said, "Oh, why don't you sit?" And we have a lot of mutual friends in politics in New Jersey. And I actually said to him after one too many old fashions, I said, "Al, I got to tell you something. You're known as a guy that'll do anything for a check. What do you think about that?" So we had like that offline discussion. And
Uh-huh.
then we had an online discussion of the podcast, which was much different. You did come up on the offline one. We'll talk about that later. And then I
Sure.
saw him about a week and a half ago at the Macanudo Club again, said hello. We keep in contact. He's an interesting guy. You know that. But, we'll talk about how.
Listen,
Yeah.
yeah, he was part of an undercover operation that I was involved in with Don King. I don't know if he told you that. He was kind of the middleman I used to talk
Yeah.
to King at the time. Big story.
Love it. Now, the thing about the Jersey mob, what made it a little different, and obviously New York, remember Tammany Hall, that kind of stuff. But New Jersey really, and Atlantic City and the Philly guys really kind of infiltrated politics in New Jersey. So give us a little bit, the kind of do it similar to New York. I kind of feel like that was one of the strong suits for the New Jersey mob, kind of having a lot of the politicians in their pockets.
Yeah, and they were all Democrats too.
Yeah.
Just keep that in mind. People ask me why, Mike, why only Democrats? I say, hey, they were easier to corrupt. What do you want me to tell you? They listen.
Yeah.
You know, people don't like that, but it was the truth at the time. Listen, it was a strong point of ours. You got to have political party power if you're going to get anywhere, whether
Yeah.
it be in business. Look at them as lobbyists for us in a way. They got things done, and yeah, Jersey was good about that. They had a pretty good outreach, as we did in New York.
Yeah.
Some very powerful guys. You don't like to say that they were in your pocket, but we did a lot with them, and they did a lot for us. Hey,
Yeah.
I had 18 licenses for my gas business, and without political contacts, I wouldn't have had one of them. So,
Yeah.
that's what makes the world go round, Tom.
That's a good point. Now, we often talk about Appalachian. For those that are really into the mob stuff, we'll talk about the 1957 meeting in Sicily, the Hotel de Palms. So there's a lot of these like commission meetings and big time meetings that people talk about, but a lot of people don't talk about the 1929 summit, which was kind of the origin of the Cosa Nostra. You did a great video on it. Can you touch a little bit about that and what happened there?
Well, yeah, everybody attended that. I think even Capone was there. He had a representative there at the time, So it was a big meeting. It was actually the first active meeting of all major mob figures in this country.
Yeah.
And a lot of things, policy-wise were decided at that time. And again, it all began in Atlantic City. So Jersey is kind of at the heart of Mafia Cosa Nostra in this country.
Now, one
Yeah,
of the oh, sorry.
I did do an extensive video on this, and I'm going to talk about it. I don't want to say too much because then
Yeah.
people won't come to the show. But I'm going to talk about that summit that night.
Well, I know when you speak at your shows, I heard you hear a pin drop. So really excited to attend. We'll get to drink some Franzese wine, which we'll get to in a second. One of the areas that you succeeded, aside for the oil rackets and other stuff, is in music industry, which you kind of overlapped with some of the Jersey guys. I don't know if it's Corky Vestola or whoever it was.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about how you got into the music game. Where did the New Jersey mob fit in there?
Well, it was really through my dad. My dad early on was involved with Kama Sutra and Buddha Records.
Yeah.
And then from there, he went to a fellow by the name of Roy and Julie Rifkin, two brothers that had
Yes.
Spring Records. And I was introduced to them early on. And when my dad went away, I kind of took over representing them, all good guys.
Yeah.
So we had our hands in that. And then, of course, you had Roulette Records back then that Corky Vestola was involved in. I came across Corky a few times. We had a few disagreements way back when, but we got along basically. So, yeah, we had a pretty solid control in the industry at that time. And, a lot of people mistakenly speak bad about our relationship with a lot of the artists, but it wasn't true. I can tell you a story. Nobby Walters, obviously,
Yeah,
that name.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Nobby represented a lot of the black talent way back
Yeah.
when. You name it, he represented them for their tours.
Yeah.
And well, you know what? I'm going to save this story. I'm going to save this one because this is a good one, Tom. I'll save it for that night.
All right.
It's a very popular artist that you'll know, but it's a funny story, and I want to save it for that night. But I have a lot of them with respect to the music industry.
Love it. One of the things, though, and I have the pleasure or the honor, or whatever you want to, or dubious distinction of interviewing the most made men in the U.S. Believe it or not, more than PBD, more than Vlad. But believe it or not, though, a lot of the made guys say, "Well, when I meet somebody from a smaller city, they're still causing all sorts, treat them with respect." You're trying to tell me, you as Michael Franzese, big money earner, Persico behind you, Sonny Franzese's son, comes over the bridge to meet with a Corky and these other guys. You're trying to tell me you don't have a little bit of the upper hand at a sit down? I mean, you may disagree, but I don't know. I have a hard time swallowing that one.
Well, maybe. Look, you got to be right at to sit down and have an upper hand. But remember this too, Tom. I was one of the younger guys.
Yeah.
And like anything else in life, and when you're one of the younger guys, there's always a little bit of resentment there, and especially if a younger guy doing well, like I was.
Yeah.
But I always treated people with respect, and we always got respect in return. And no matter where you were, if you're the only place that we ever went to that we didn't hold people in very high regard was in Los Angeles.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'll tell you, whenever I went anywhere, I had to go to Chicago, I had to go to Kansas City and places like that. And when I was a captain, I check in with my boss and I said, "Listen, I'm going to such and such a place." And they would tell me, "Well, always check in out of respect and let people know what you're doing there." Except when I went out to LA. They said, "Michael, out in LA, you do whatever you want. Don't worry about it. If there's any blowback, we'll figure it out, And that's the truth. But Chicago, even New Orleans, Tampa, Florida, wherever we went, we always checked in and gave people respect.
Now, I don't want to sidetrack too much. Was LA ever really a family?
Not really, no. There was a guy by the name of Pete Milano that was out there, was kind of the boss, and his father was in Kansas City. I mean, Cleveland. I'm sorry, Cleveland. But it wasn't regarded as a family. And I was in jail with them for a couple of years. Nice guys, but you didn't really hold them in high esteem.
What's interesting? Speaking of the Colombo family for a second, and it's not a knock at anybody. I get a lot of crap for this. Probably get some phone calls. I always feel like the Colombo family is super strong in Brooklyn. I just really feel it's not that strong outside of Brooklyn because you were kind of a guy that floated around, but a lot of people didn't. But there were a few guys in LA from the Colombo family, which we won't talk about, but they kind of set up shop and they did some pretty big things out there, in my opinion.
Yeah, they did, and one of them, he's gone now, but Donnie Shacks, he did pretty well out there. But yeah, listen, we were one of the smaller families.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you look at it, the most respected, maybe powerful family really was the Genovese. I know a lot of times they think Gambino, but Fat Tony and Chin really held a lot of authority around the country. You mentioned their names and people listened, it was kind of like that. But, listen, we try to respect one another. It's part of the life, and you try to do it wherever you go.
Well, I'm going to give a shameless plug to the book Mafia Democracy, which if you get the premium package, you get to meet Michael, get a signed book. But you talk a little bit about the role of the mafia and organized crime in the development of the actual United States. And you get to put a little color to that.
Well, listen, you got to give Luciano and believe it or not, Meyer Lansky. They were all one crew. Bugsy Siegel at the time. You got to give them the credit for really making this an organization. Really, and putting some real structure to it that people respected. Dividing it up into families and creating the commission at the time. And that's where it really, started to become, or did become very organized and really very powerful. When the family started working together, in many ways, that's when we became a powerhouse throughout the country. And Tom, I'm going to tell you something, something I've been saying and unashamedly, I wish we were in power right now, because some of the garbage that's going on in the streets would not take place. Remember this. We took care of our communities. We took care of our neighborhoods. There was no crime there. You take John Gotti, people say, oh, John was a murderer. People in his neighborhood loved him, because he took care of people in the neighborhood. And, I've been unashamedly saying this because so many people contact me on my channel. Michael, we wish the mob was here now. I said, well, there wouldn't be the stuff that's going on in the streets if we were around. That's for sure. We would take care of it, but it is what it is.
Well, I know you got out mid 80s, essentially, for the most part. And then I kind of harken back to at best mid 90s to go back to Riggy and those guys. My family came from Italy. If you knew somebody, they would help you get citizenship. If you knew somebody, they were kind of a secondary government. I'm not saying they were perfect guys, but there was some utility, which I think you'll probably talk about. Once they started losing that utility, I think that was kind of the downfall. So how has the Mafia changed over the years, specifically in New Jersey and Philly, maybe up to current day, in your opinion?
Well, listen, like I said, the golden years are gone.
Yeah.
I think, listen, when I was in that life, there wasn't a day or two that went by when there wasn't a story in the newspaper, Daily News, New York Post, Long Island Press, Newsday, about somebody or a lot of guys all the time. Yep. Now, I read the New York Post every morning online, and maybe every 6 months you'll read something, maybe. And it's not even a headline anymore. It's only, on page 30, whatever. Yep. So there's two things. Number one, it's not as powerful as it was, and I don't think we'll ever see those days again. Correct. And number two, I think the guys got smart, and they're really playing it undercover. It's not going to go away in my lifetime. I know that for sure, but I don't think you'll ever see the presence like you saw way back when.
Kind of like how you morphed into business. And interesting enough is, don't get me wrong, I consume your mob content, but I overconsume your business and political content. I just think you remade yourself, you reinvented yourself. I always say, and I chatted with some folks and that are kind of, came from your life. Did the mob maybe make the mistake by not kind of morphing into more of a Freemasonry type organization of maybe legitimate Italian businessmen with maybe a pocket full of, knuckle draggers that you need every so often, but live off the reputation, build businesses, get away from the legal stuff, and kind of morph into Freemasonry? Like, when I say that, is that something you think of? And does your father like roll over in his grave? Or is that something that, you know what, Tom, they missed the boat on that and you agree with me?
100%, I agree with you. As a matter of fact, my dad, who wasn't a real business guy, he was more of a street guy, but he would tell me all the time, Michael, the hell with the street, the money is legit. Go legit, go legit. He's the one that always put it in my head. And my entrepreneurial side came from his advice, even though really not his tutorship, because he wasn't that true. My dad would never want to invest a penny in everything, anything. It's always other people's money. When I used to make an investment, he used to get mad at me. What are you putting up your own money? I said, Dad, you got to put some money in sometimes. But anyway, no, we definitely missed the boat. Guys like Paul Castellano, you can knock him, but he tried to steer the family that way. He really did, to get in business, legitimate business. The Gambinos were pretty strong in that regard.
Yep.
Even Carlo's kids and Carlo's nephews, legitimate stuff. And as a result, they lasted pretty long because they stayed away from most of the street stuff that they could. That was definitely the way for us to go. And we missed the boat on that.
Now, what should we expect from the talk on the 23rd? Again, September 23rd. We'll get to the code in a second. What should we expect when we attend?
Well, again, You're going to get good history of the mob in New Jersey, New York, Atlantic City area for sure. You're going to get some of my background, some of my story. How, and Tom, one of the things that fascinates people, and I have to say this, when I open it up for a Q&A, you would think that you would get all Mafia
Yeah.
questions, right? You don't. You know what it is? How did your family handle you going away for 8 years? How did you make this transformation?
Yeah.
They're all stories that I think people relate to anybody in any lifestyle because in some way they're going through the same struggles. How did you relate to your brother, being a drug addict? These are the kind of questions that I get, so people are really paying attention. But they're going to hear all about that. I answer all the questions that I possibly can. And we're going to do a book signing. We have a VIP section there too. I think people are coming back. It's a meet and greet. We'll take photos. We always have a good time. And honestly, I really enjoy doing these events because I relate to people.
Yeah.
And I get to continue communicating with a lot of people that are at the events, believe it or not.
Love it. Now, I did the wine review. I did not ask Michael for wine. I ordered it myself. I did it not knowing what the outcome would be. I gave you a 4.2 out of 5. I'm going to put a link to the wine review up top. When I text you, you knew about it already, so I was floored by that. But just give us a little bit about the wine. It's sourced from Armenia. I mean, I can go on and on about it, but I want to hear from the vintner yourself. Give us a little bit about Franzese wine.
Yeah, and I think the story behind this is important, for people that are thinking business. When people ask me, Michael, I have a product I want to sell, and, how do I approach it? And I tell people all the time, remember this, the first product you're always selling is you.
Yeah.
You're the product. When you walk in the door, people are taking notice of you. They want to know what kind of person you are, and they're sizing you up. You're first, your product is second. So here's what happens. A guy comes to visit me, young guy, he's 21 years old. He's Armenian.
Yeah.
He says, Mike, he gets in touch with me, he comes to visit me. He says, Michael, I've been following you since I'm 10 years old. Now, he's 21. So I already know this kid's got a mind for business, right? He's an entrepreneur. And he lays out this whole deal about Armenian wine. His name is Sam. I said, Sam, I never heard of wine out of Armenia. I never tasted it, I said, why would I do this? And he went on and on and on and talked and talked and talked and gave me the whole background. I said, let me try the wine. So I tried the wine. I liked it. It was good. And I know wine. I go to Napa Valley all the time. I'm going to be in Italy the next couple of weeks. I know wine. But what really got me, the story behind the wine is this. When Noah's Ark in the flood, the flood subsides, the Ark lands. It lands at the foot of Mount Ararat. And in the new civilization, the first vineyards were planted at the foot of Mount Ararat, which is now part of Armenia. So it's kind of a transformation. The new civilization fits with my story. And I said, okay, this could work. I said, it's Armenian. We'll introduce it to the United States and around the country. But what really got me is this young man. I said, Sam, I'm betting on you. I really am. I'm throwing a talent with you. And he's overperformed to all my expectations. So we're in it just about a year and a half now. We're starting to branch out all over the country.
Nice.
We will be serving it now in New York and New Jersey. We just made a deal there. We're in Ohio. We're in Michigan. We just served our first distributor in Canada. We're going into New Orleans, Mississippi, Louisiana. So people are accepting it. They're loving it. And I'm very happy about it. I really am.
And those that watch the show, I analyze a business perspective. And what I was looking for, was this a white label deal? Was this a licensing deal? Mike threw his name on it. No, Michael, I know I know you well enough, where if you do something, you do it well. And the packaging, the branding, the way I think it was a Malbec that I had. It was just absolutely fantastic. And what I loved about it is it wasn't too expensive that you can't have it where your Wednesday night pizza, but it's nice enough to bring to my buddy's house when he just had his second kid or something. So that's what I liked about the range of the wine. Again, check up top. I'm going to put the review below.
Yeah, just so you know, this young man's family has been in the wine business in Armenia for 25 years.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, there's a long history. It's a family operation. So that really enticed me a lot more. I said, okay, he's really got skin in the game here. And it's turned out well. And I think people are going to be knowing about Franzese wine in the next couple of years all over the country and hopefully all over the world.
Well, just as an FYI, if you go to the site, francesewines.com, New Jersey is blocked out at the moment. However, you can order. I got it from Wine Searcher. So I'm able to get wines, Franzese wines to New Jersey. They now have a distributor. You're going to be able to get it at your local restaurant, your local liquor store. And I'm going to reach out to Sam. I'd love to have him on because I would like to know the machinations on the business side. So here's what we're going to do. In honor of Sam, the key word below is put the word Sam below, and that automatically enters you for one of the 6 tickets. Now, some of you are shy, and I get it. We know, Mike, there's a lot of trolls out there. If you want to email me the word Sam, Tom@New Theory. In 2 weeks, we'll pick the 6 winners. Michael, I'll give you the closing statement, and I get chills every time I talk to you, brother.
Well, thank you, Tom. And I think we're going to, Caesars is going to be serving our wine that evening. I think my guy is working with them, and they're going to be making it available. So whoever comes, you can have a taste of the wine that night. But Tom, listen, always a pleasure to be with you. I appreciate you bringing us on. I'm excited. Listen, when I'm in New Jersey, I feel like I'm at home.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing. It really is. I've been living out in California now since 1985.
Yeah.
But whenever I come back east, whether it be New York, New Jersey, even Michigan, Ohio, I feel so at home. You know, it's my crowd, my people. I know I'm going to feel that way in Atlantic City. I can't wait, and I'm happy to meet you there. And you know, maybe we'll have a drink after the show, and be great. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I just want to say one last thing before I conclude. I've dealt with a lot of former guys from the life, and I say this all the time. If I was blindfolded or I did not know rank, I could tell who was a boss all the way to who was an associate. And I will say, when I deal with a lot of these guys, they ask for a lot of stuff. Michael has never asked for one thing from me. And then for Michael, that's why I want to support you the best way I can. And I appreciate you for being on the podcast.
Well, I appreciate it. Anytime, you know, I can support you, Tom, you know, I'm there.
Awesome.